faithfully conveying value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, the book I'll interpret for you is How Data Misleads Us, subtitled A Primer on Statistical Thinking for Ordinary People. In everyday life, we're constantly dealing with all sorts of data. We use IQ to gauge someone's intelligence and GDP to assess economic health. When picking a place to eat, we check scores on review sites. Plus, all kinds of health data determine a person's wellness and when they retire. Basically, in today's world, everything about our lives, from what we eat and wear to how we're born, age, get sick, and die, is tied to data. Each of us is both a data creator and a data consumer. Lots of folks think data mirrors reality perfectly, but the book's author, Sanne Blau, is skeptical about that. Blau is a Dutch econometrician and data journalist. His work involves handling all sorts of data, so he knows that data isn't always objective or truthful. Different folks studying the same issue might get different data, and analyzing the same data can lead to varied conclusions. Plus, misusing data can impact millions of lives. Lau wrote this book to make people more cautious about how data is used. It's in today's world where data is everywhere, we need to learn how to use it properly, instead of letting data take over and control our lives. Now, I'll break down the book's key ideas into two parts. First, what issues can come up with data usage? Second, what risks are there in the big data age? Let's start with the first part. What issues can come up with data usage? The author breaks data usage down into three stages: standardization, collection, and analysis. Problems can occur at each stage, starting with standardization. At this stage, we gather data about whatever we're measuring. Some things are easy to measure, with clear data to collect. Like, to assess a family's financial health, we'd gather their income and spending. But sometimes, what we're trying to measure is more abstract and complicated. The data we collect might not capture reality accurately. For example, the book points to IQ. People often see it as an objective measure of intelligence. The higher a person's IQ score, the smarter they're seen. The lower it is, the more foolish they're considered. But that's not the case at all. Intelligence generally means people's ability to recognize and understand things and solve problems using experience and skills. It includes a lot that's hard to quantify, like creative thinking, communication skills, and the ability to reflect and improve after mistakes. These are all abilities we need for problem solving. So, how is IQ actually figured out? Currently, IQ tests mainly cover vocabulary quizzes, spotting differences between things, and math and logic puzzles. In short, IQ tests focus on a person's knowledge breadth and abstract logic skills, so they only cover part of intelligence. A high IQ score shows broad knowledge and strong abstract logic, but that doesn't guarantee better performance in real-world problem solving. 88. Actually, IQ tests weren't invented to measure intelligence, but to help students. The first creator was French psychologist Alfred Binet.
In 1904, France's education minister asked Binet to find a way to identify struggling students needing special education.
So, Binet made a test with questions that got progressively harder.
Based on how many questions students answered, Binet could spot those falling behind.
This method was scientific because students under similar education conditions are comparable, but over time, some people broadened IQ tests' use. They compared folks with different education levels and environments, viewing IQ as a true measure of intelligence. This led to a bunch of bad outcomes. During World War I, Harvard psychologist Robert Yerkes designed a mass-use IQ test based on Binet's work, giving it to 1.75 million U.S. recruits. After analyzing the data, Yerkes concluded that European immigrants and Black people had much lower average IQs than white people. Yerkes' finding had deep historical impacts. As a result, many believed Black people were naturally less intelligent than white people, worsening racial discrimination. Some politicians also used this as a reason to reject millions of Jewish refugees' entry requests during World War II. The data from IQ tests also helped legalize sterilization laws in the U.S. In 1927, forced sterilization for women with intellectual disabilities was ruled legal. The U.S. Supreme Court justice's reasoning was, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. It wasn't until 1978 that this inhumane practice was declared illegal. The root cause of these tragedies was people ignoring that IQ tests aren't a true reflection of intelligence. Having covered issues with data standardization, now let's discuss the second stage of data usage, collection. Even if standardization is fine, errors can occur during actual data collection, leading to data that doesn't reflect reality. But the author uses the example of American biologist Alfred Kinsey's 1948 report on human male sexual behavior to illustrate problems in data collection. Back then, the image of American men was mostly that of proper, well-mannered gentlemen. But Kinsey's report showed that 50% of men had affairs, 37% had homosexual experiences, and 1 in 12 had sex with animals. This data came from Kinsey and his colleagues, interviewing 5,300 American men. The report's conclusions seemed too outrageous to American men, and many criticized it. To address public criticism, the Rockefeller Foundation, which funded Kinsey's research, sent 3 statisticians. They conducted an in-depth investigation of Kinsey's data collection methods and pointed out issues, which can be summarized in 3 points. The first problem was inappropriate survey methods and question design. Kinsey's approach involved face-to-face questioning, covering all aspects of sexuality. For a sensitive topic like sex, it's hard to ensure respondents tell the truth. Some believe that compared to face-to-face interviews, people are more relaxed and honest with questionnaires, but questionnaires aren't reliable either. In 2003, an experiment had 200 students fill out a questionnaire about sex lives, with some connected to lie detectors.
The results showed students connected to lie detectors reported 70% more sexual partners than others.
So for sex surveys, there's no clear winner on reliable data methods, but it's certain that in face-to-face interviews, some definitely lied. Besides survey methods, question phrasing also affects responses. For example, Kinsey would ask, "When did you first masturbate?" Such questions might make non-masturbators feel abnormal and ashamed, so they'd likely lie. The second problem was Kinsey's unrepresentative sample and small size. Statisticians consider this Kinsey's biggest flaw. Kinsey collected data mainly at gay bars, prisons, and college campuses. His subjects were mostly gay men, college students, and Midwest residents. He barely visited conservative churches, factories, or rural areas. With no Black participants, the report reflected white Midwestern male sexuality more than human male sexuality. Unrepresentative sampling plagues other fields too, sometimes with severe consequences. For years, drug companies tested medications primarily on men. Researchers assumed drugs work equally on both sexes, but reality differed. In 2001, the U.S. government investigated 10 drugs withdrawn for side effects. 8 caused more issues in women. And 4 of those 8 were prescribed more frequently to women. Beyond lack of diversity, Kinsey also sampled too few men. With 60 million white men in America then, his 5,300 subjects likely differ greatly from the whole population. So how to fix unrepresentative and undersized samples? Many survey firms use random sampling, like picking someone randomly from a phone book. With true randomness and large samples, diverse coverage is possible. Sadly, this wouldn't work for Kinsey's study. Because sex surveys are highly sensitive, even randomly selected people might refuse interviews. And so, no matter what method Kinsey used, his data only came from sexually open respondents. Conservative folks simply wouldn't participate. But in reality, they might actually be the majority. Exactly these conservative people. The third issue with Kinsey's data collection was his personal bias. Kinsey wasn't just a sex researcher. His own attitudes towards sex were widely discussed. In James Jones's biography, Kinsey was bisexual and had affairs with other men. He also encouraged university colleagues to practice open marriages. Overall, Kinsey felt a mission
Believing conservative sexual attitudes prevented authenticity, and he needed to break societal prejudices to grant sexual freedom.
This personal bias made Kinsey prioritize samples that deviated from social norms. Strong evidence shows Kinsey's report included a sex offender's data, which he falsely claimed came from multiple men. Now, these combined factors made Kinsey's data diverge from reality.
So when collecting data, we must examine both methodology and the collector's biases. Both affect reliability.
Now let's discuss the third stage, analysis. A common goal is finding causes, but people often mistake correlation for causation.
In 2015, 5 Dutch researchers reviewed health news reports and found 20% exaggerated findings or causal claims.
The author terms this false causation pseudo-causation. In data analysis, we must learn to spot such pseudo-causations. The book introduces 3 common types of pseudo-causation. First is coincidence, where 2 seemingly related events actually have no connection.
A classic case is Paul the Octopus, who during the 2010 World Cup predicted 8 matches by choosing food containers with national flags.
Paul the Octopus's fame skyrocketed, with many believing he had psychic powers. He even became the mascot for England's 2018 World Cup bid. But a more scientific explanation is that Paul had no predictive ability. It was all coincidence. The odds of correctly predicting 8 soccer matches are about 0.4%. Low, but still better than winning the lottery jackpot. In fact, if we expand data collection widely enough over long periods, we'll always find accidental correlations between unrelated things. American data analyst Tyler Vigin runs a site called Spurious Correlations dedicated to outrageous statistical links. For example, he found yearly pool drownings match Nicolas Cage's movie count, and iPhone sales curves resemble stairfall deaths, despite 0 actual connection. The second type of pseudocausation is the missing factor. This means 2 things are related, but not causal. Both are effects of a third factor. Say a study shows smoking students have worse grades. Does that prove smoking affects learning? Nope. A better explanation. Unmotivated students are more likely to smoke. The real cause is attitude, not cigarettes. The third type is reverse causation, where the cause-effect direction is backwards. Take a rich person owning stocks. Common view: wealth enables stock purchases.
But reality might be opposite. Early stock investments created the wealth, enabling more purchases.
All 3 pseudocausations are common. In data analysis, we must be careful not to mistake pseudo-causation for real causation. The author notes, some may intentionally frame real causation as pseudo-causation to create confusion. In 1953, American cancer researchers published a paper showing tobacco tar causes cancer. This report sparked fear and concern about tobacco among Americans. So tobacco giants took action to calm the public and disconnect smoking from cancer in people's minds. These giants used a clever approach. They didn't argue smoking was healthy or unrelated to cancer, because to argue those points, they'd need solid evidence.
And that evidence didn't exist. Instead, they cast doubt on the smoking cancer link. Keeping people confused was enough.
One tactic was hiring journalists and statisticians to offer alternative explanations for the smoking cancer connection. The pseudo-causations we discussed became perfect tools for this confusion campaign. And, for example, some scholars suggested people with certain genes might both enjoy smoking and be cancer-prone, so genes caused cancer, not smoking. Others claimed smoking didn't cause lung cancer. Instead, those with early symptoms who hadn't noticed them were more likely to feel lung discomfort. To ease that discomfort, they turned to smoking. How should we respond to such arguments? The author believes these explanations could hold for individual studies, but scientific conclusions come from all related research, not single studies that might be flawed. When numerous diverse studies agree, we can trust the conclusion. The smoking cancer link has been proven by many different studies. Epidemiological surveys show higher cancer rates among smokers.
Biologists proved animals develop tumors when coated with tobacco tar.
Pathologists found carcinogens in cigarettes that damage cells. With such overwhelming scientific consensus, we can confidently say smoking causes cancer. Okay, let's summarize part one. Data usage involves three stages: standardization, collection, and analysis. In the standardization stage, the data collected might not accurately measure the true situation of the research subject. In the collection stage, factors like collection methods, sample diversity and size, and personal biases can all affect data reliability. In the analysis stage, people might confuse pseudo-causation with actual causation, leading to wrong conclusions. All these issues occur during manual data usage. As times change, much data processing has been handed over to computers. People tend to believe computer-analyzed big data is more comprehensive, accurate, and trustworthy.
But big data can actually mislead us too. Now, moving to part two.
Let's explore what risks exist in data usage during the big data era. We'll still examine this through standardization, collection, and analysis to see big data's potential pitfalls.
First, standardization. Big data hasn't really improved this stage.
Reality always contains countless things that can't be quantified with data.
Many believe big data profiling allows comprehensive assessment of things or people. This mindset causes problems. The author gives an example. In finance, many companies use big data to assess creditworthiness. Computers collect data on income, spending, and repayment history, then calculate a credit score using algorithms. Financial firms then decide loan approvals based on this credit score. If credit scores only assessed financial behavior, like IQ tests measure abstract logic, that would be reasonable. But in reality, credit scores are used far beyond finance, becoming a catch-all term for general reliability. For instance, some U.S. dating sites display credit scores, where high scores are seen as making someone dateable.
Additionally, a study shows about 47% of U.S. employers check credit histories, with many applicants rejected due to poor records.
Employers believe credit history predicts whether applicants might deceive the company in the future. But currently, no evidence links borrowing behavior to workplace performance. The few studies show no connection. This is classic data misuse, essentially no different from using IQ to represent intelligence. Now let's examine big data's issues in the collection stage. Objectively speaking, big data excels in this area. The collection problems mentioned earlier have greatly improved in the big data era. With ubiquitous internet and sensors, computers collect massive personal behavior data directly, boosting reliability. Take sex surveys. Some refuse or lie, but computers can access search histories and chats to reveal true attitudes. Despite this, big data collection still has flaws.
In 2012, the U.S. FTC found at least a quarter of personal data in credit reports from one agency was wrong.
About 5% of those errors were wildly inaccurate, causing higher loan rates. Between 2009 and 2010, the UK healthcare system listed 17,000 pregnant men. This happened because the system mistook surgical codes for obstetrics codes, so blindly trusting big data's accuracy is equally dangerous. Meanwhile, big data collection itself creates problems. Through app monitoring, personal data is often collected without consent, invading privacy and risking criminal exploitation.
Many countries have underground data black markets selling IDs, phone numbers, even website logins.
Some use this data for crimes like impersonating others to apply for credit cards. Finally, the analysis stage, big data's weak spot. Computers only show correlations between phenomena, but whether that's coincidence, due to a third factor, or actual causation, computers don't know, potentially misleading decisions. As mentioned earlier, expanding data collection always reveals accidental links between unrelated things. The issue of coincidental correlations is further amplified with big data. Google launched an algorithm called flu trends in 2008. Google believed that by analyzing keywords people search when sick with flu, it could predict flu outbreaks in advance, including location and scale. For the first 2 years, this algorithm accurately predicted flu outbreaks. But in subsequent years, it made incorrect predictions. This is because the algorithm predicts flu by analyzing keyword frequencies, but it can't determine if those keywords actually relate to flu. The algorithm only finds that keyword frequencies correlated with flu spread in the past, which could be purely coincidental, so predictions can naturally be wrong. For example, Google researchers found that one keyword used to predict flu was high school basketball. No one could explain how this keyword related to flu, so it was manually removed. This keyword. The author also points out that if we don't explore the true relationships between phenomena and just act based on big data analysis, we may not solve problems and could even worsen them. In the US police system, there's an algorithm called predictive policing that uses criminal statistics to predict who might commit crimes in the future, aiming to improve arrest efficiency. Algorithm analysis shows a strong correlation between poor young Black men and crime. The reasons for higher crime rates among Black people are complex, involving factors like education environment and economic status, but the algorithm doesn't explore these causes. Guided by the algorithm, police focus more on Black people fitting these profiles, leading to higher arrest rates and many wrongful arrests. This increases societal discrimination against Black people, making it harder for them to find jobs and worsening living conditions, which in turn boosts crime rates and sparks more racial conflicts. From this example, we see that when using big data, we're shaping reality according to its direction. The author believes this is a point to be especially vigilant about. As mentioned earlier, many things in life can't be quantified by data, like trust, justice, and care. When we over-rely on big data analysis for decisions, we may neglect or even harm these important things, creating more social problems. All right, let's summarize part 2.
In standardization, personal credit scores can be misused.
In collection, while big data has improved in accuracy and volume, errors still occur. In analysis, big data only tells us about correlations between phenomena. If we don't explore what those relationships actually mean, we might be misled by the analysis. With that, we've mostly covered how data misleads us. The author believes that since data's influence permeates modern life, we must focus on proper usage to avoid being misled. Many countries now recognize data's limitations. Several U.S. states have banned employers from checking job applicants' credit data. In the Netherlands, some teachers no longer just use grades, but provide detailed feedback to help children grow. Progress in data usage. Data is created by humans, and how we use it is up to us. We should be masters of data, not its puppets. So that's how data misleads us. That concludes our interpretation for you. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.